the opportunities and challenges of incorporating M&E into decision making.
Good afternoon, everybody. So, first of all, thank you for inviting me. And so, just for my knowledge, can I just know how many are engineers by educational background over here?
It's one on the table.
1, 2, 3. Okay. So that makes me know that how much deep I should go in my presentation, because I am from a environmental background. I am a technical person. I am an engineer by education. So forgive me if I go a little bit into depth into technicalities, but that is all what I work day in and day out. So before I go further, being an environmental engineer, I would like to start with a quote that we must protect nature much more efficiently day after day, because unless we don't do that, uh, when we are stepping forward toward an uncertain future, it will be too late to do something. And when I was just making the presentation, I came across these two good cartoons, which I think emphasize what Yamini said about M&E. The first one says that monitoring is important, and unless you use monitoring for the project, you don't know where you will go. So it is important. And second one is that M&E is not something different from the project. It is a part of the project. It is very much important, and without it, you cannot go forward. Now today I am going to present two case studies, not two case studies actually, two projects or two initiatives that we have implemented at the Gujarat Pollution Control Board. And because I am going to showcase the initiatives from Gujarat Pollution Control Board which are implemented in Gujarat, it is important that you know, many of you might be knowing, but still I guess it is important that you know some things about Gujarat and a few things about Gujarat Pollution Control Board too. So just to start with, Gujarat is a state in the western India, the westernmost state in India. And the capital is Gandhinagar, while the economic capital or the largest city is about 30 kilometers from Gandhinagar, which is Ahmedabad. Gujarat has many ancient sites like Lothal, Dholavira. It is the only home, Gujarat is the only home to the Asiatic lions in the world. And of course, everybody knows Mahatma Gandhi, Sardar Patel, and of course our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, all are Gujaratis. So this is the Gujarat share in India. We are a population of 5% of the total population in India, with a geographical area of just 6%, having industrial units of 10% across India, with a net manufacturing value of 12%. The value of output is 16%, with fixed capital investment of 17% and exports of 22%. So you can see, with a population of just 1/20th of the country, we are exporting 1/4 produce of the country. And this is Gujarat's contribution to India. We are having 35% of pharmaceuticals produced in India, 51% of the chemicals, 62% of petrochemicals, 65% of plastics, and 80% of diamond and salt production each. Again, if you see, 35% of pharmaceuticals, 51% of chemicals, and 62% of petrochemicals. So this is the sector where maximum pollution arises. So again, we are always on the radar as a, don't know, you might have heard it, that most polluting state across the country. But of course, when we are having such a lion's share of industrial units, we ought to have more pollution also. So, and again, some few more data and facts. We are the third largest denim producer in the world, the state alone. We have the largest ship breaking yard in Alang, Bhavnagar, and we have the world's largest grassroots refinery, that is at Jamnagar. And we are having the distinction of being one of the most industrially developed state in India. Now I'll speak a little bit about the Pollution Control Board. It was constituted in '74. It is a statutory organization which has come out through the Water Act. We are into conservation of environment by pollution control and improved management. And we are having 27 regional offices and 9 state-of-the-art laboratories across the state, through which we are handling all our critical issues, including the management of the permits issued to the industries. So the mission statement of GPCB at developing all-round capabilities to protect the environment by controlling pollution and effective law enforcement, of course, keeping the state on course of sustainable development. And over the years, as you know, uh, as we have grown and progressed, the complexity of pollution has increased day by day, and even the laws have become more and more complex and stringent. So the standards of performance expected are even growing more, and we are trying to fulfill and achieve those performance standards. And over the last half decade, we have changed our stance from just being a mere regulator instead of and going towards being a facilitator. So now we are more of doctors to the industries than just being a police to the industries. I will explain how we have done that in the presentation later on. It is through the environmental clinic that we have called, just like we have health clinics, we have got environment clinics and help desk. Now, if you, I don't know, nobody must be knowing over here the past history, but in 1995, there was a case in the Honorable High Court of Gujarat, and the High Court gave a landmark judgment. According to the judgment, there was a need was felt that the environmental monitoring and infrastructure in the state should be strengthened. And the difficulties in regular monitoring of the industries which are scattered across the state should be tackled, because the difficulties were because of the shortage of manpower and infrastructure. So along with the High Court, board had a long discussion, long debates, and then we came out with a solution which we know as an environment audit scheme. Of course, a little bit of that scheme, some primary principles are already given in the Rule 14 of the Environment Protection Rules 1986, but it was worked upon and we came out with a scheme, environment audit scheme. It was the first of its kind in the country. No other state had such environment audit scheme. So if I just go in brief across the environment audit scheme, two schemes are operational, but I will talk only about the environment audit scheme. It is the outcome of the judgment of Honorable High Court of Gujarat. Over here, the principle polluter pays is incorporated into the scheme. So the polluting industries, they have to pay for whatever pollution they are causing. The scheme is based on the principle of continual improvement, so that over a period of years, the same industry, if it is monitored, evaluated under the audit scheme, it should show improvement. And as I said earlier, it is an extension of the environmental statement submission under Rule 14 of EP rules. The scheme was introduced in 96, primarily to enforce discipline among the industries, arming GPCB as well as the Association of Industries across the state with required data, and of course doing the monitoring of the industries with a different angle, so that the regulator is not directly involved in the monitoring, but still the monitoring happens. And the basic idea was that qualified technical professionals who are not employed with GPCB, who are not a part of the GPCB, but who really have the expertise, they become a link between the individual industries on one hand and GPCB on the other hand, and the association, with a vital element of accountability. Otherwise, what happens is, of course, there are people who are helping or who are doing the audit, but they are not accountable. By this scheme, we make them accountable, so that they are responsible for whatever they are submitting or what they are reporting. And according to the scheme, we have classified the industries into Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. That is, having more pollution potential, they are Schedule 1 industries. Less pollution potential are Schedule 2 industries. And the industries are audited by the auditors recognized by the board. But of course, the auditors ought to have some predefined qualifications and experience. That I'll have in further what qualifications they need. So the scheme applies to the industries manufacturing or processing the products that are defined under Schedule 1 or Schedule 2. Schedule 1 industries are audited by Schedule 1 auditors. Schedule 2 industries are audited by Schedule 2 auditors. And Schedule 1 auditors are all academic institutes, that is engineering colleges and R&D institutes. And the Schedule 2 auditors are recognized by the board, and they are usually the experts and the professionals in the environment field. So for Schedule 2 auditors or even for Schedule 1 auditor, each team has to have this composition. Only then they can be recognized by the board, and only then they can carry out the auditing. So the advantages that we envisaged and that we initially had was that the monitoring had increased because we had an extended arm of the auditors who were helping GPCB for monitoring. So it was then complementary to the existing regulatory mechanism. Overall assessment of the environmental performance, which we were not getting regularly, because earlier an industry was visited or monitored by the regulator once or twice in the year, that now our auditor was monitoring in every quarter. So we are getting more results and more observations about the industry, and the adequacy of environment management system were ascertained, and a better compliance was obtained. And of course, because the audit system was a sort of voluntary thing that the industry had to do to show continual improvement, so it had an element of voluntary compliance also. So instead of the regulator taking a stick and going after the industry itself was trying to improve and comply voluntarily. Again, the recommendations given by the auditors led to good practices, green practices. If the auditor found that this industry has some lacuna, it would directly suggest to the industry, and the industry would directly try to improve upon it. We got the technical inputs from the auditors, and again, at that time also we had a system that if the auditor gave a false report, they were held responsible, and up to the extent that they could be blacklisted. Now the scheme itself, after say about 5-6 years, these are the limitations and challenges that we came across. That the reporting started becoming repetitive, stereotype. As we find many places, it was just cut and paste. Few of the data were changed and the same report started coming. Because the auditors were appointed by the industry, there are all chances that the industries and auditors were hand in glove. They started reporting everything goody-goody, everything was fine, but if you go there, you found the picture to be something else. And there was a competition between the auditors to get work. So they started quoting less price. So less pricing meant poor quality, or not visiting the industry and doing the monitoring as required, but making the report on the table. So all that started coming in. And again, auditors were monitoring, or they were required to take the samples regularly, but instead they started taking grab samples. So we are not getting the results. So over a period of time, the system started deteriorating, and it came to our notice. So then, few more limitations that auditors had to rely upon the data supplied by the industries. Then because it was not applied across the country, so the industries felt that it was a little bit burden, that they had to spend something extra, which same type of industry, say in Maharashtra or Tamil Nadu, did not have to spend. And we felt that there must be more strengthening, and some R&D or some evaluation of the system must be done so that we can improve the system. So we had run monitoring, evaluation and control trials on the group of industries along with the help of JPAL. We gave JPAL a project for that, and we tried to bring out some reforms so that our goal of improving the audit reports and ultimately improving the compliance for the environmental regulation is there. So what we jointly designed and evaluated in the reforms was that auditors were randomly assigned to the industrial plant. So then what the industries did not have the choice of selecting the auditors, but instead the board or the system what we have at the computerized system that we have at GPCB, it started allotting the auditors to the industries. So the hand in glove experience that we had earlier started fading away. Then we had that the industry should not pay to the auditor. Instead, the auditor should be paid from a common pool from GPCB. So again, the nexus from industry and auditor was broken. We monitored for the accuracy, and we had some incentives for accurate reports. So this is a comparison of the audit system. One is the status quo audit group, and the new scheme that we introduced, like selection of audit, it was selected by the industrial plants, while on the other side we were randomly assigning the auditors. Fees earlier were paid by the industries, now it came from the common pool. Then monitoring the audit reports were not verified for accuracy. We started doing 20% back check. So the auditors came to know that now our reports are also being cross-check. So let us be more accurate, let us be more cautious. And there were no incentives earlier. We had some incentives for the auditors. So these are the findings, that when they were paid by the firms, false reporting and pollution was high, which started decreasing after the reform. And even the industrial plants reduced pollution in response to more accurate audits, because once they found that these audit reports are going to be back-checked, so the industries themselves became cautious that we should not give in false reports, or even voluntarily we should start improving upon ourselves. So the recommendations that came after the research was that instead of letting the industries choose the auditors, it should be the auditor should be randomly assigned by the board to the industries, which we are doing right now. There should be no negotiation between the industries and the industries for their fees. So what we have done is that we have fixed the fees, we have fixed the structure, we have fixed everything. So whatsoever auditor is assigned to them, the fees remains the same. So they don't have a selection of paying high or paying less. And we have introduced random back checks into the auditing system. So which makes the auditors also more cautious to give proper reports. And future, what we want to implement is, over here I have mentioned orange category industries. We have a category of industries from white, green, orange and red. White is non-polluting, green is less polluting, orange is medium polluting, and red are the severely polluting. So what we have started is that auditor certificate could be a valid certificate for exemption of GPCB visits for orange category industries. So now that is an incentive for the auditors also, that is an incentive for the industries also. Then auditors are now, of course, working as extended arms of GPCB. Audit reports, we are using them now for complementing or supplementing the decisions which you make for the permits. So earlier we did not take into account those audit reports, but now we take into account those audit reports. And these audit reports can again be used for back checks for our own staff. So if our own staff is going for visit and if they are reporting something, then we cross-check them against the auditor's report. So it makes both the sides, the auditors as well as our staff, both of them cautious that they should give accurate reports. So this was about audit. Now I think this is a common scene that many see during the winters. Even this one is the same. This is not India, but still this is a very scary and common scene that we often see. So this is air. What I'm trying to stress is this is air pollution that we often come across, which needs to be controlled. So air pollution is quite a serious issue, and I know in December and January there are lots of issues of air pollution in Delhi. Because of that, we have these odd even schemes, and all different types of solutions are being applied to mitigate the air pollution. And major sources are wood, biomass, vehicle emission. And again, across all the pollutions, we have the PM, respirable particulate matter, is a challenge for India. and almost many of the cities exceed the acceptable levels of PM in India. So this is a air quality index they have tried to reproduce for 2015, that is specifically for PM 2.5. And if you can see, during January, February and November, December, it is exceeding, while during monsoon, because of natural scrubbing, there is no PM 2.5. So this means that we need to do something for controlling the particulate matter in the ambient air. So there are the ways and tools for mitigating are that one, you have to control the source of pollution, either by reduce, eliminate or prevent pollution. Second thing, most important is measurement of air pollution. Unless and until you measure it, you don't know whether your strategies are working or not. Measurement has to be source monitoring and ambient air monitoring, both. Now, currently, source monitoring is done in a manual way by sampling and data collection. The existing method is an isokinetic sampling method. That is, you sample from the source, that is from the stack or chimney, an undisturbed flow, and the purpose is to capture the particles that are going through the chimney in the same way without disturbing the flow into the system, so that we can know how much particulate matter is being emitted. This is just tried to show what isokinetic sampling is. So you need to have the similar condition. If you don't have the similar condition, the result can either be less or more, which is incorrect. You need to have exact result. This is again a particulate sampling train. I will not go into the details. This is a kit by which we really do the sampling. On the left hand side, you can see it is the probe, and at the right hand side, you have the vacuum pump. So the vacuum pump sucks the air from the stack, and along with it, the particulate matter is getting sucked, and that way you measure it. So the errors that can occur over here are that moisture in the stack can be influencing the accuracy. Gas composition can influence the nozzle and probe direction. If it is not correct, then it will influence the accuracy. Leakages in the equipment, then the test equipment calibrations, unstable process conditions, all these things can affect the accuracy. And again, manual sample, it gives an instantaneous pollutant concentration. It does not give you a real-time value. So it is not useful for computing the total pollutant released. Again, because of human intervention, there are chances of error, and the manual sampling procedure is lengthy and cumbersome. So then, how to deal with it? So we came out with a solution. We are now implementing continuous emission monitoring system, which we call it as SEMS. So I'll just brief you what SEMS is, and then I'll go further. So it is to overcome the limitations of manual sampling, we are implementing SEMS. Principles are similar, but once the instrument is set, you get real-time value. So this is the differentiation between manual stack sampling and SEMS. That it is based on gravimetric method, it is indirect method, infrequent intervals, it is real time, and only concentration based standards and results you can get. Over here you can get load based standards, so total pollutant released, that also you can know. These are the various technologies used for SEMS. I will not go into details. These are the advantages, that you have real time information, you have a remote accessibility to the regulator. So even sitting in my office, I can see what an industry is emitting 1,000 kilometers away from me. I don't need to go to the site to measure the quantity of pollutant. Reduction in long-term regulatory cost. Then there is transparency and openness. Once I get the results on my desktop, I can put it into public domain so everybody can know. That is a transparent. Then load standards are can be implemented. Once you have the load standards implemented, you can apply the market-based mechanisms like ETS and all those things. Once the industry knows that my results are going into public domain, it itself voluntarily tries to be compliant. It tries to self-regulate, and that is again one big factor, a positive factor. And we have a continuous efficiency check of the EMS. So the environment management systems, how they are performing, that we can know on the continuous basis. This is just the schematic diagrams of the system. I will not go into details. These have few photographs which show that how the SEMS are installed on the chimneys. These are the probes that are installed on the chimneys, and these are the instruments inside the control room where you get the results. So one more thing that I would like to stress over here is that calibration is very important for the SEMS. I have put the importance of calibration, that because this is an indirect method, unless and until you have proper calibration, SEMS is of no use. Now I'll just go quickly. We have implemented SEMS in Surat. This is just an introduction to Surat. Surat is a port city in Gujarat. This is again the Surat's contribution towards the nation. You can see over here, fabric production is the major activity. We have about 30 million meters of raw fabric and 25 million meters of processed fabrics produced every day. Now these are the textile mills. These textile mills ought to have a boiler which use solid fuel and which contribute to the ambient air quality in the city. So we try to have SEMS over there and see how they are performing. I'll just skip this slide. This is a overview of the city before we had installed SEMS. These are about 10 to 15 years old photographs of Surat. We have more than 450 industries. They are having boilers using solid fuel. SEMS implementation is done as a part of ETS also, and also to study how SEMS are performing so that it can be rolled across the country. And we are rolling out SEMS in a phase-wise manner. This is the figure how we are doing it. Already we have done phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 3 is under implementation, and after phase 4, all the 350 industries will be covered for SEMS. These are the key steps for rollout in every phase, how we are going to do it. So, and again, SEMS rollout is not limited to just installation of SEMS device, but it encompasses all institutional arrangements, and several activities have to be completed before physical installation begins. These are the issues of SEMS implementation. First is technology selection. So what happens is, why we have put in phase-wise implementation is that after phase 1 and phase 2, we have come to know that which technology is really helping us, which technology is really applicable, so that we screen out the inapplicable technologies. Again, we in India don't have certification as like is available in Europe and US. So based on the experiences of phase 1 and phase 2, we are trying to develop a certification system. Installation is an issue. You need to install the SEMS at the right place, again otherwise they start giving wrong results. So based on the experiences of phase 1 and phase 2, we have come out with the protocols and guidelines which are again being modified, that what type of installation needs to be done, what errors should be avoided. As I said, calibration is very important. So in the protocol we have developed that how often calibration should be done, how often calibration should be verified, so that the data that we get is accurate and correct all the time. Data acquisition and handling system needs to be perfect, so that whatever data we are getting is tamper proof and it comes in real time. And of course data validation at the end, that is also very important. So all these are challenges that we had at the start of the project, but after 2 phases we have almost overcome most of the challenges. Yes, still we are struggling with a few items like calibration, data validation. But installation, certification is not there, but we know that how things need to be moved ahead. Technology selection, we have come out with a matrix. So based on the midline survey, after the 2 phases, we have been able to solve the problem to a large extent. So before I end, I will just like to end with a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, that of course earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not to every man's greed. So let us not be greedy, let us just be needy and use whatever we need and leave the rest to our future generations. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Burak and I will try to speak about systems thinking in policy making and the role of the researcher. And before starting, I would like to set the scene a little bit, and the presenting is not going to be very easy after a great presentation which is so much detailed about the particular importance of the policies and why it is so important to be careful on the details. And hopefully my presentation is going to be a little bit kind of completing each other in terms of being more conceptual, and I will try to support as much as possible from the experience that I have been having in the last 7 months. And as a disclaimer as well, I joined JPL team in last August, so I'm relatively quite new to India and Indian context. which is can be a kind of an advantage in the sense of being an outsider sometimes give you an advantage to look at the system as a kind of a being outside of the system and try to understand what is working, what is not working, what can be improved in the context. And especially policy making is such a complex issue that it is almost impossible to solve the problem in a very smooth way. There's always going to be back and forth. There's always going to be iterations, and it is kind of the nature of the thing that we are doing every day. So I'm a part of the DBT team, or the Direct Benefit Transfers team, or the official name is the Payments and the Government